Okay, today I'm going to go over the 8th kata in the Kushiwake Jitsu system, the fighting line. Alright, now I'm going to break this into sections. The sections are of my decision how I break them up. I wasn't taught them that way. It's just going to make it easier for me to go over some of the details of this kata. Again, this is the way that I learned it from Shihan Gilliland. So I'm going to try to make sure that I add in all the details that he broke down for me. Now the fighting line, as is in the name, works on a line, whereas if you go back to basic kata 1, 2, and 3, those are done on, depending on what school you're from, either an I pattern or an H pattern. Okay, everybody's got their own way of describing that, where you would move on both sides of a leg, then up the line, then on. Well, in fighting line, you're on one line, okay? So we're not going to be moving a lot in space. There are some things that are introduced in fighting line that you haven't done in the other katas. There's also some things that have carried over. You'll see that in the first section that I go over, we're going to go back to some things that you first learned in basic kata 3, but then learned something a little bit different about that movement in slant 4 that's going to be in this kata. You're also going to be doing way of the river motions in this kata that you haven't done in the other ones. We're also going to, at the very end of the kata, address what ki breathing actually is. And I'll talk about how it was tested when I was learning this kata. Okay. So again, let's break down the pattern of the kata, and I'm going to use the Kushiwake Jitsu patch. Okay, so in Kushiwake Jitsu rather, on the patch you see that you have this arc. I may be exaggerating this just a little bit here, but when you have these lines here, I know you can't see this here. And then you have these kanji symbols, which are the dragon on the top and the tiger on the bottom, right? It's not my best drawing here, guys. All right. So where you have, if you straighten these right here out, let me get a different color here, or maybe not. If you straighten these out here, you got this. You have this I pattern or H pattern, however anybody wants to call it, for basic kata 1, 2, and 3. Okay. For blocking square, you could finish off these lines. You would have a square there for blocking square. Since this is for instructors, blocking square was not created based on a pattern necessarily for the purpose of learning Kushiwake Jitsu. It was based on the fact that Shihan and the rest of the instructors get really tired of hearing that somebody hasn't learned that block. So it's drilled to death. Okay, so remember, that's important for you as an instructor to be drilling basic or blocking square 1 and 2. Okay, slant 3, right, is your diagonals here, and then slant 4 moves on your cross. And then fighting line is just on a line. Okay, that's why it's called fighting line. All right. Side note: the reason that the dragon is on top and the tiger is on the bottom, if you see on this patch here, is because this is wisdom over strength. That's the whole idea behind it. We're going to go over the first section, and what I call in the first section is facing forward on the line. Okay, so that's going to be the first section before I make any turns around. All right, so the first thing, we've ended on slant 4, so we're in a cover position. feet are together. We're in a covered position. Stay upright, you know. Okay, from here, with the fighting line, you only bow the head, right? And remember, when we're bowing, okay, we don't want to see this. We don't want to see this. I want to see your eyes, okay? And make it intentful. This needs to be about respect. Not just respect for somebody that you're in front of, but respect for the kata, respect for the system, respect for its history. Okay, so do it with purpose. So we cover, bow, just ahead. Now the first thing we're going to do, again, we learned way back in basic kata 3, which is stepping out to the fighting stance. Okay, we're doing an outside block, a low block, and then a reverse punch. It's going to be a little bit different here. Okay. Now, with this first step, in basic kata 3, what you learned was to step out. If you remember here, boom, I'm going to step out into a fighting stance, and I'm going to do my outside block, my low block. Then I'm going to step through into a front stance and do a reverse punch. Here. In slant 4, you learn on the first turning, you learn that when you get to this point with your fighting stance, your outside and your low block, you're just going to rotate your hips from a fighting stance into a forward stance and punch with the rear hand. That's what we're going to do in fighting line. Okay? So we're from the cover position, bow the head, step out to your left. Always, every kata, before we move, we look. Look to your left, step out to your left into a fighting stance. Outside block, low block. Shift the hips and transition the weight into a forward stance or a front stance. Reverse punch. Now we're going to look to our, Now from here, we're going to step through into a right fighting stance. Right fighting stance. And we're going to rotate the hips and shift into a front stance and do another reverse punch. Okay. It's going to get a little bit different here, and I'm going to go over the details that I was taught from Shihan Gilliland about the coordination of the upper body and lower body when we do this next piece. Okay. There's a lot of details in this kata. All right, so from here, stepped out, I've done my fighting stance to the left side, shifted to a forward stance and punch, step through to the fighting stance, and then rotate the hips, do a front stance and punch. Now I'm going to step back onto the line, okay? And I'm going to end up in a horse stance, a fighting horse stance. Okay, a horse stance is really deep, fighting horse stance is a little more relaxed. Okay, the knees aren't quite so bent, your hips aren't so deep. Okay, so from here, excuse me, this arm, this is the last punch you did. Leave it here, okay? It's going to help you remember which hand you need to be working with here. You're going to step back onto the line, and as you do, this foot needs to be pointed forward. It needs to be set where it's going to be right now for when it ends. Okay, so with this hand, watch closely. I'm going to take this hand right here, and as this hand comes down, watch this knee. As it passes this knee, it's going to reach its max turned inward. Okay? So as this comes down, this is up on the ball of the foot. The knee is turned inward. It's in line with my hips. Okay, I'm not out here doing some funky thing. Okay? Coming in. Now from here, as it passes, I'm going to sweep off the arm. This is going to come into a full arc and out and plant. I'm going to go over that in detail. A lot of stuff going on here. So this comes in, this foot turns in on the ball of the foot, this hand comes through, sweeps through, this hand comes out and it's going to sweep off or brush off the arm. Now, I'm not making some big wild movement. I don't want to see this stuff, okay? I don't want to see anything outside of the orbit between your hips and your head and your shoulders. That needs to be your limit of movement. Everything else is out here wasted. You're not doing anything as far as defense goes, okay? So come in here. This is coming up and then sweeping out. It stops as far as the line of the shoulder. Now, when I plant, see how this is turning with my arm? Watch closely. Boom, turning with my arm. It's coming back out. When I plant this hand with the elbow sinking down, I'm going to drop this elbow down. At the same time, I'm going to plant my heel of that left foot. Boom. So sweep, boom, sweep, boom. Now something I want to point out, with all katas, I see this happen a lot. Neglecting the chamber hand, okay? This is just as important as the other hand doing something, okay? So when you do a reverse punch, if you're doing this, you're putting power into this, but you're not, you're just kind of, this is lazy over here. I don't see that, okay? You need to be paying close attention to what you're doing. Whatever power you put into this one, you need to put into that one, okay? So here, boom. Pretend like you are elbowing somebody behind you, okay? Make it, every movement we do has a purpose, it has an intent, okay? Same thing with here. When I come through here, when I plant this, when I'm sweeping off this hand, when this hand plants, this is a movement here, right? Boom. This hand, I'm really chambering that, okay? That needs to be like a rear elbow. So from here, boom. Now, you end this, I'm in a fighting horse, you end this with 2 reverse punches, the second punch, kia. So come in here, boom, right there.